Before we go any further, I want to slow this down again. Nothing in this video is about digging into your past. Nothing here requires you to relive anything. And nothing here is asking you to fix yourself. We're still just talking about how stress shows up, especially in people who are used to carrying responsibility. And if the first video felt steady, this builds on that. And if it didn't, it's okay to stop here. That's not avoidance, that's self-regulation. All we're doing today is adding language to something that's already happening. No action, no change, just understanding. Most people imagine stress, failure, as something obvious, a breaking point, a collapse, a moment where everything falls apart. Most people imagine stress failure as something obvious, a breaking point, a collapse, a moment where everything falls apart. That picture makes sense because it's dramatic. It gives stress a clear shape. But that's not how it usually works for people who are used to being reliable. High-functioning people don't usually fall apart in the moment. They adapt. They compartmentalize. They stay composed and just keep going. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. They're still productive. They're still responsible, still handling things. So when stress doesn't look like breaking, it gets dismissed by other people and eventually by the person carrying it. But pressure doesn't disappear just because it's managed. If it doesn't come out as collapse, it comes out sideways, quietly, over time. People like this don't break, they leak. And leaking doesn't look like failure. It looks like functioning with a growing cost. When pressure doesn't come out as a breakdown, it still has to go somewhere. That's what I mean by leaking. Leaking isn't dramatic. It shows up quietly in places that are easy to explain away. I want to name a few common ways this can look, not so you analyze yourself, just so that you recognize the pattern if it's familiar. Sometimes it looks like irritability, shorter patience than there used to be, less margin. Sometimes it looks like emotional flatness, still functioning, but less range. Sometimes it shows up as over-control, needing things managed to feel okay, feeling more on edge when they aren't. Sometimes it looks like withdrawal, pulling back, not because you don't care, but because being on costs more. For some people, it shows up as numbing, scrolling longer than planned, drinking a little more than intended, staying busy just to quiet the system. And a big one people miss is fatigue that rest doesn't really fix. Because what's exhausting isn't effort, it's pressure that never fully releases. None of these are flaws. They're pressure looking for an exit. Leaking doesn't mean you're close to collapse. It means you've been functional for a long time without a release valve. I want to give you a concrete example of what leaking can look like. Not to relive it, just to make the pattern clearer. I was sitting in a restaurant. Nothing unusual was happening. From the outside, I was fine. I was present. I was engaged. I handled it. Internally, my system was already bracing, more alert than the moment required. Not panicked, just on. Because I'm used to functioning, I didn't question it. I didn't stop the moment. I didn't leave. I carried it. Nothing went wrong in the moment. I stayed composed. The cost showed up later, once everything was quiet. Not as panic, not as emotion, just exhaustion. A flatness that didn't match the day. That wasn't a breakdown, that was leakage. Functioning doesn't always mean recovered. Before we wrap up, I want to slow this down again. Nothing in this video was meant to diagnose anything. Nothing here was meant to tell you what to do. If you recognize yourself in any of this, it doesn't mean something needs fixing. It just means pressure has been quietly carried for a long time. It just means pressure has been carried quietly for a long time. And if none of this fit, that's okay too. You don't need to force yourself into the frame. Leaking isn't weakness. It's what happens when competence outpaces recovery, And if none of this fit, that's okay too. You don't need to force yourself into the frame. Leaking isn't weakness. It's what happens when competence outpaces recovery. There's nothing you need to change right now. In the next video, we'll talk about permission. Not permission to quit, not permission to disengage, permission to acknowledge cost without turning it into failure. And if now isn't the right time to continue, stopping here is still a complete choice. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not behind, and you're still standing.